week's episode of Drifters, the evil Black King takes control of the Bronze Dragon by using his super regenerative abilities and essentially transforming him into a massive mound of cancerous flesh. The Drifters also prepare for their big confrontation with the Ends when they're suddenly confronted by the Count of Saint Germain, who brings his sparkly friends with him. I'm not sure if I don't like the Count of Saint Germain, or if I'm just creeped out by him, or if it's like a combination of the two. But something about their characters just really rubs me the wrong way. What is interesting, though, is that the Count of Saint Germain, being a drifter himself, has decided to leave the Orte Empire and join up with the Drifters and their cause. And honestly, I think he will be pretty useful to the group. And what's also really useful is that the dwarves themselves are starting to pump themselves back up. The fact that they're basically like Luffy or Goku, when they eat, they start to get like super muscular again. Something about that's really funny to me. That and the fact that they are expert craftsmen. It looks like they're actually going to be able to recreate all of these guns and muskets for Nobunaga, who he himself is just having a huge fanboy boner after seeing this. At first he thought maybe this wouldn't actually be able to happen all that fast, but no, once these guys get the hand of it, they are going to be able to make a huge freaking arsenal for the Drifters, the Elves, and the Dwarves. However, the Ends are ready to fight back as well. We got to see a lot more from the Black King's abilities in this episode, and if it didn't further cement the fact that this dude is Jesus, then just watch this episode. Some of the imagery from this episode is just ridiculous. Not to mention, I like the fact that even though he might be Jesus, he's doing like a lot of the opposite of like really what he's all about, which to some people might come across as slightly blasphemous, especially for those who are very religious. I think if you just take it for what it is, it's really not all that bad. And honestly, it wouldn't be the first time that an anime series has taken a historical figure and put a very big spin on them. Fate Stay Night comes to mind, although they've never done such a big figure such as Jesus before, so honestly I have to say they are taking some pretty big risks with the show by doing that. But the fact that he has the power of like regeneration and he can create food and plants for the people is strange. Not to mention he can heal people to the point where their cells actually can't keep up and they start to bubble over and transform into these massive cancerous cells. That's what he does to the dragon in this episode, basically turning him into this big badass and turning him into a crying little pussy when he transforms into this like giant mass of nastiness. Basically completely taking control of him and using him as a food source for his freaking monster army. It's some metal-ass imagery, but like I said, it still might actually offend some viewers. I really liked that in this episode we got to spend some time with the Ends as well, who always seem to be sort of like on the back burner of the series in terms of development. We get to see that the Russian Anastasia is very concerned about Joan of Arc. In fact, she's straight up pissed off, and I really can't wait to see her in action. I also love the fact that both Anastasia and Joan of Arc are very similar to each other and yet very different, which is also represented by their powers, with Joan of Arc using fire and Anastasia using ice. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Drifters? A very simple setup episode, but one that I actually liked a lot, especially because, like I said, we got to spend some time with the Ends, who are arguably some of the most interesting characters from the series. They're so mysterious, especially the Black King himself, they are just continuing to keep this guy as secret as possible, but with all of the things that he's saying and doing, just all of the evidence is pointing to this guy being Jesus. His contempt for mankind and love for monsters is very juxtaposed to the historical version of Jesus, but again, that's what also kind of makes this refreshing and super shocking all at the same time. There's also just a small smidge of action in this episode when we got to see the Count of Saint Germain's followers going after Toyohisa, which honestly didn't really go anywhere because they get distracted by the weirdest things. They're both tempted by bearded men and Yoichi, apparently, and Yoichi got completely shit-faced in this episode, which was pretty funny because he might have accidentally started turning on the dwarves. Dwarves of the series, beware. Yoichi is a trap. And even though I don't like the character of the Count of Saint Germain, I'm really interested to see what his ultimate motive is going to be. I mean, would you really trust a guy who allied himself with Adolf freaking Hitler? I mean, he's definitely not trustworthy whatsoever, and he might even have his very own ulterior motive. It's kind of hard to read a super clownish and ridiculous character like him, but he might end up being a very valuable asset. We're just going to have to wait and see. That being said, this was basically just a big setup episode as we get even closer to the finale of the first season of Drifters, and I can't wait to see what they're going to deliver for us. It also had some pretty decent production value for the most part, but there were certainly a couple of animation and artwork moments that looked just a little wonky and lazy. With that in mind, this was a pretty solid setup episode of Drifters, so I'm going to give this one right here a 4 out of 5. Check it out, Drifters fans. If any of you did watch the episode, make sure to tell me what you liked or did not like about it, and what you hope to see from the rest of the first season of Drifters. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Make sure to like it, subscribe to the channel. I will see you next time, and as always, stay dandy, baby.